Alright, guys. 1982's The Beast Within. Now, this is directed by Philippe Mora. I don't really know anything else he's done. I'd have to, maybe if I heard the names of movies, I'd be like, oh, I've seen that, and that's by him. I didn't know that. But it stars Paul Clemens, who gives such a great performance in this movie, as Michael MacCleary. And I'm hoping to have him on the channel sometime soon. I spoke with him. He's such a nice guy. So, Paul, if you see this, whenever you want, just message me and we'll talk all about this movie. But this is such an underrated horror movie, underrated monster movie. Like, you don't hear this movie brought up a lot. And it's an absolute shame because I love this movie. There are some amazing practical effects near the end of this movie. And it has an interesting story to it. Like, it really does. If anyone hasn't seen this movie, The Beast Within, definitely check it out. I don't think it's streaming anywhere, but I'm sure you'll be able to find it. But basically, the synopsis, spoiler free here, is we have this family, the MacClearys, whose 17-year-old son Michael is starting to get really sick. His parents put him in the hospital, think that he's dying, and it turns out being that he's just evolving. I think that's a nice spoiler-free way to put it. But there's some good symbolism in this movie too. So, I mean, it's a great monster flick from the 80s, and like I said, it never really gets talked about much, which is a shame. So if you guys haven't seen it, definitely check it out. But we are now going to talk spoilers and watch The Beast Within. Also, just to give two little backstories, fun stories about this movie. And Paul, if, I'm going to send you this. I actually just saw your message pop up. So I recorded this a lot later than I thought I was going to. But, and Paul will get a laugh out of this. But if anyone's ever seen the documentary 50 Horror Movies, the greatest 50 horror movies you've never seen, now, I mean, if you're a hardcore horror fan like me, and a lot of you guys are, you'll pretty much have seen almost every single movie on this list. Like, it's pretty much more for casual horror fans or people that never really dove deep into some underrated classics. But it's a cool list, and if you want to like remind yourself of some movies that you haven't seen in a while, take a look at it. It's a cool documentary. I'm pretty sure it's on YouTube. It was on Tubi for a long while. But this movie is pretty high up on the list, which I was so happy to see when I first saw that documentary. And Paul Clemens, the star in this, does give some interviews and some words on some of the other movies and stuff, which is great to hear. And the director, Philippe Mora, gives this great story about the ending transformation scene. And that they were shooting in like an abandoned wing of a mental asylum. And while they were doing all the practical effects and prosthetics and everything on Paul Clemens, and they're directing this crazy, awesome-looking transformation scene, there was a patient that came like into that wing, that abandoned wing, and all he saw looking in the room was lights everywhere and the the practical effects on Clemens, and this guy freaked out. And the director Mora, he said in this documentary, he was telling the story, and he was saying that he's never been like okay with that ever since. That he's like, oh man, this mental patient must have went down to the rest of them and said, I've seen it. Like, I've seen the experiments. I see what they're doing. That is too funny of a story. But if I have Paul Clemens on the channel, you guys will probably hear from him, and we'll talk about it because that is a funny story. Now the score in this movie is great too. Like, there's some really good compositions in here, and it has that monster, creature feature feel to it. And it's another thing that I feel is so underrated about this movie. I'm not sure who did the score, but it's really fitting for the movie, and it's some great stuff. So there's so many underrated things in this movie, aside from the whole movie itself. But if you guys have seen it, leave something in the comments, and let's see if we have anybody else who praises this movie like I do, because I absolutely love this movie. The opening credits are really cool, with the score and with just the shot of the moon in the background. It sets the atmosphere like very well for this. So we open up here in 1964 in Neoba, Massachusetts, I want to say. And we have Eli and Caroline MacCleary who are driving through, and we see this creature break out of a basement, a cellar that was chained up. He breaks out, and I love the POV shots from the monster's perspective here, because we don't see much of him in the beginning here. And I think that was a great choice by Mora, because then when we finally see Michael's transformation at the end of this movie, that's the first we see of what these creatures really are, and it's so much more effective that way. Like, I feel if they would have shown like the creature at the beginning here, it would take away a little bit from the last 25 minutes or so of this movie. So great decision to use POV shots from the creature's perspective, because it just makes the whole transformation and ending so much more powerful. Could have been Mississippi, because 17 years later they're in Jackson, Mississippi. I don't remember what the state was at the beginning with Nioba, but they go back there. So, but we see Caroline and Eli's car get stuck, and he goes to try to find help and fix the car, and this creature attacks and rapes Caroline in the woods. And I love the whole symbolism here and the theme throughout this movie of cicadas. Like, this is an idea you don't see. Like, I can't think of any other movie that has, like, cicadas playing a prominent role in it. Like, every 17 years, this event seems to repeat. Yeah, we've seen that before. Like, with Stephen King's It, where Pennywise comes out every 27 years, or the Jeepers Creepers, when the creature comes out every 23 years. So we've seen stuff similar to that, but like specifically cicadas, I can't think of another movie. And it's very well done. Like, the sound design is great in this movie too. Like, there's not much negatives I have for this movie, like, at all. It's such a great monster flick. But the whole theme with the cicadas, with the sound design being so great, and every time that Michaels feels like he's about to snap pretty much and go overboard and get taken over by this creature inside of him, you hear the cicadas like chirping and stuff, which I think is a great touch for this movie. So 17 years later, after the rape of Caroline, we see Michael in the hospital, and the parents, Eli and Caroline, they don't know what is going on with him, and Eli doesn't want to accept, 17 years later, that Michael's not really his son, that he's the son of what raped Caroline. And of course they don't know what exactly that is yet, but even just thinking it was some guy, some rapist, that's got to be so hard to deal with. So I mean, I can imagine even this long later, so many years later, this is still hard for him to digest. I mean, this is his son. He raised him, since birth. So like, how do you process that? That like, this isn't my true blood son. Like, this is the product of my wife's attack and rape. Like, this movie touched on some really touchy themes and stuff back then. For 1982, I mean, the very beginning of the 80s, it touches some taboo subjects for back then, and I applaud it for that too. The acting is so good in this movie, from everybody, but stand out is Paul Clemens as Michael. He absolutely kills it in this role. Like, Paul, amazing job. Like, every time I see this movie since I first seen it, it's just standout performance. Like, he really captures the pain that Michael's in, and that as he finds out more and more of what's happening to him, just every time that he gets close to being taken over and forced to hurt someone or kill somebody, the pain that he shows in his performance and the agony, and just that he doesn't want to be he doesn't want to be this person. He doesn't want to be taken over by this creature, but he doesn't know what's going on with him. And I think he portrays all of that excellently. Like, it's such a good performance. Everybody in this movie gives a great performance as well. But we see Michael sick in the bed, and his parents are talking to the doctor, and he ends up mentioning, bringing up that we tested both of you guys for abnormalities or anything like that can explain this, and nothing, unless we're missing something, implying Eli's not the father, which he's not. So they end up saying, if that's any chance that we have at saving our son, let's go to Nioba, where the attack happened, see if we can track down who the father could possibly be. Maybe that can help in some way. So they decide to go to Nioba. Nioba. Did I say Nioba? Nioba. So then Michael ends up having this dream of someone being thrown into that cellar that we see at the beginning. And of course, we find out at the end is where. Oh, why can't I think of his name? The guy who attacked Caroline, who ended up turning into this creature. And we see him have a dream of this. And I think the cellar, I mean, it's such a, literary device like 101. It's like, in the cellar, that's where you're keeping your deepest, darkest secrets and stuff. And this town of Nioba, that's exactly what they were doing. They were keeping this thing in there as one of their deepest secrets, like the darkest secret they have in this town. So it makes perfect sense, and it's rewarding that they have him chained up in the cellar here, because it works literary, it works for great metaphor. Love it. So Eli and Caroline arrive in the town, and she masquerades as that she's doing like a writing piece on crime in small towns, and goes to the looks like the newspaper and tries to look through all their back issues to try to find any article on her attack or if they captured the attacker or anything like that, while Eli goes and talks to the judge and sees if he can give him any information on 17 years ago any attacks or specifically rape that happened in the town here. And after Caroline ends up getting an article that talks about Lionel, which we find out more about later, and then we see that this is a hidden secret, a little conspiracy in this town, because we see the judge and the news article guy group together and spy on them walking through the street, and him warning the judge, saying that she came in, she took the article all about Lionel and blah blah blah, and so we see that there's something strange going on with the authority figures in this town, and that there was something they didn't want getting out. I also like how they make the sheriff of the town like a new sheriff. Like, it's not like he's in on it too. He isn't. He doesn't know anything about this, and he becomes, part of trying to solve this whole mystery, this whole crime, and try to help them get to the bottom of it. I like that decision. They easily could have made him just the same sheriff who was there when this attack happened, and he knew all about it, and he was part of the cover-up, and they could have, but they didn't. And I really like that about this too, is that you have a neutral cop pretty much until they start uncovering more of what exactly happened and what's happening with Michael. Great decision there too. And I was going to say something else. Oh, I love the line from the sheriff when he's talking about the sheriff who was alive and working there when this attack happened 17 years prior, and he's saying that he passed away in 1969, so you're a tad late, but it's been like over a decade. I love that line. So funny. Cool how they divide the parts of the movie in like the first night, the second night. That's a nice little touch also. So Michael ends up leaving the hospital and drives back to town, and he ends up finding the cellar from the beginning of the movie and where they had the creature locked up. And then he goes to visit. Is that the book guy? I can never tell. They look so similar, but I'm not sure. But someone he's delivering food to, and he starts saying, "You look like crap," and that too, like the effects on Michael in this movie of just the sweat and everything, like how you can tell he's in so much agony, like when this thing inside him takes over. Like really good job on that also. And this guy ends up offering to cook hamburgers or meat for the two of them. And then he hears the cicadas, and we hear them for the first time, which they flare up, and we hear them every time Michael's about to kill someone. And he proceeds to kill this guy. I'm thinking it has to be the book guy, because isn't he the beast within? Isn't he trying to kill off all the people who covered up the crime, or all that are related, like with the same last name? Yeah, so I'm guessing that's the guy from the news article place, and because I don't think we see him again, so yeah, it has to be him. And he ends up just getting his neck bitten into by Michael, and it looks great. Like I said, the effects in this movie, I mean, of course, the whole extravaganza with practical effects is at the end with the transformation, but even the kills throughout this movie, they look great. And just the nice little touch too of having the hamburger meat and stuff like falling in onto the guy's feet, and like that are still in his hand that he was clutching and stuff while he's getting like his throat ripped out. That's awesome too. Like nice little touch there. Awesome stuff. Yeah, it was definitely the newspaper guy, Edwin. His name is, because then the judge ends up going to his house because they're talking and they say that the newspaper isn't open yet, and that hasn't happened since the night Lionel's house was torched. And I love that they have a place right next to the newspaper called Yum Yum Donut Shop. I don't know, just a random observation, but that's funny as hell. So Michael was walking and he happened upon this house that Amanda Pratt is in, and he ends up passing out, and then he ends up getting taken back to the hospital. And they're saying that they want to leave and go back home, but he's saying he likes it here. And I like this whole romance between Amanda and Michael. And I like that he pretty much like is trying his best throughout this to not kill her because she's related, her father's related, the cousin of Lionel Kerwin, and he's basically the beast within is trying to get revenge on the Kerwins. So he's trying to kill and proceeds to all the members of that bloodline, of that family. So I love that there's a whole romance between the two of them that he has to basically keep his distance the whole, most of the time. Otherwise, it's going to take over and it's going to kill her. Like awesome little twist on a romance in a movie. Oh, I love when they're making out in the woods, Michael and Amanda, and the dog is digging up something and then brings it over to them and it's the severed hand. That's cool. And the father, Horace Platt, Amanda's father, is a despicable human being, man. Like, I know in the end, like, he tries to, like, show some sympathy and emotion and stuff, but he's an abusive piece of shit. Like, he really is. So near the end of this movie, it's always kind of satisfying. He gets killed, right? I haven't seen this in a little bit. I mean, I rewatched it like a month ago. I'm pretty sure, yeah, he gets killed. And it's very satisfying because I hate seeing how he treats Amanda's daughter in this movie. And you know, the fact that he killed his wife and lover, that doesn't help him either. So we move on to the second night. So the sheriff and them, they find the woman's body buried in the woods, the remains, and he notices, I think it's the doctor, right? Because he said he put in like a stainless steel plate or something into her leg, and it's still there. And the bones have been gnawed on. So they go to see Dexter, the morgue guy. I like the whole scene with when Michael leaves the hospital again. He started feeling, you know, like he was getting sick. And he leaves and goes outside and he runs into Tom. And it's always interesting to me when I rewatch this. Now we know that, what's his last name? I know it's Billy. I'll know in a second. But Billy is Michael's real father, who was the creature and stuff at the beginning of the movie. But it kind of portrays it like Billy is taking over Michael, like when he does the killing. But I've always wondered if this is just like a psychic type of link that Michael has with his father, Billy. And so he can like hear his thoughts and like he's taking revenge or enacting revenge for what this town did to his father. Or if it really is Billy. Like, if it really is his father. So I've never understood that completely, but I like how they leave it ambiguous like that. Like, you can look at it both ways. And I really like that about this, how it has that mystery to it a little bit. Oh, Connors. Billy Connors. I don't know how I forget that name. It's such a easy to remember name, Connors. It reminds me of Chuck Connors from Tourist Trap. God, I love that movie too. I guess you can also look at it, what I was saying with the ambiguity here, is sticking with the cicada theme. It's every 17 years they come out of the ground. So if this creature, Billy, was chained up and then he died, but he ended up raping Caroline and having Michael, is it the same kind of entity, like the cicada type creature, that's just being reborn through Michael? And it is Billy? That's another way you can look at it too. So, a few interesting possibilities here. That actually might be the theory I'm subscribing to now, because we just hear Tom reflect on when him and Billy would talk, and him saying that he can have the control the magic of the cicadas, and that you can if what if you can be reborn. So that's what I think I'm going with, is that Billy is being reborn through Michael, and when he sheds his Michael's skin at the end, it that's Billy, the creature. That's what I think I'm going to go with. But I'd love to hear people's thoughts on it. Let me know in the comments. So then the mortician, he wants out. Like, he's been keeping the secret of the town for 17 years. So he wants money and he wants out of this. But unfortunately, he's not going to be able to see the next morning. And I love this shot. The shot of the mortician guy, like, looking at the female body. And then we have that awesome shot of Michael rising in the body bag, like, or the sheet that's on the other side behind him. That's a really cool shot. Love that. Then he ends up stabbing the mortician and killing him. And his death is, I mean, his acting with the death is it's a little hokey. Like, it's like I mean, it's a little funny, but great, great scene. Love it. Then the sheriff and the rest of them come to find Dexter, the mortician, because the grave of the woman they found it just has a bunch of rocks in it. And pretty sure it was the woman's grave, right? Yeah. And they come and find him, and he's been embalmed, like while still alive. So he didn't die there with the stab wound. He proceeded to be embalmed by Michael slash Billy. That's tough, man. Imagine having to go through that. Oh, I couldn't imagine. So then they get wind that Michael is at Amanda's house, and they rush over there because Horace, the father, is going to kill him. And they end up getting there. They take Michael out, and then we see despicable Horace with him smacking his daughter Amanda in the face. And then immediately afterwards saying, "I'm sorry, baby," and like hugging her. Shit doesn't fly with me. So then we see the doctor looking at x-ray scans and saying that there's the strangest thing, he's never seen it before, that there's a subcutaneous layer underneath the epidermis, underneath Michael's skin, which is, this creature trying to break out. And I like the little effect on the back of Michael's neck where it's starting to split. And then in the end, in the transformation, is where it's kind of like a zipper on a suit. Like, it's kind of where it all rips from and when he sheds his skin. Cool little effect there. I like that they have Tom get locked up for the night for being drunk. And then he ends up getting out in the morning and he's telling the sheriff that he knows he's doing these killings and that it's Billy, only it's not Billy, it's the MacCleary boy. And they just like, here, you go buy some food or something. Like, they don't trust this drunk. They're not listening to a thing he says, even though he's pretty much giving them the who's doing the killing, the murderer, right in their hands. Just handing all the information they need to him. And whatever, drunkie, like, get out of here. And then Tom doesn't even get that breakfast because he ends up getting killed by Michael. And I like that scene too. How he throws him over, I think it looks like a power plant or something, and throws him down and he gets electrocuted and it even kills the power in the town and the sheriff's department. And again, great makeup on Michael. Like he's starting to look like a beast, like with the teeth and like his mouth and area. Looks really, really great. Such a great scene when Michael comes to Amanda's again and tells her she's got to leave, just get in her car and drive because there's something that's going to come after her and try to hurt her. And that there's nothing, even though she didn't do anything, there's nothing he can do to control it, that she's a Kerwin too. And I love when his little short little monologue, it's not even a monologue, but when he's looking out the window, Michael, and we start hearing the cicada noise again, and him saying that they're in the trees now and soon they'll be shedding their skin, just foreshadowing what's going to be happening to him also. Really cool. And then Michael tries to resist as much as possible, but he goes to attack Amanda. Then he's able to regain control of himself and pulls a Father Karras from The Exorcist and throws himself out the window or the door and falls over the porch balcony. Cool. Like, it does really remind me of The Exorcist, though, with Karras. Then we just have such a great 20 minutes at the end of this movie with just like I said, just an extravaganza smorgasbord of amazing practical effects. And they have Michael back in the hospital, and God, his performance here when he's just screaming like kill me, and just that's really hits, man. It really hits you hard because he knows that once this thing breaks out of him, like this, he ain't gonna be Michael anymore and he's trying to save all of them so he doesn't hurt anybody and just kill me. Just that sends chills down my spine. Very intense part of the scene too is when he starts having like a seizure, and the doctor is putting the stick in his mouth so he doesn't bite his tongue off. Like that's a cool little part of this whole ending scene too. And then we have the judge who goes to see Horace, and he pretty much just convinces Horace to go kill Michael. So he's on his way to the hospital with his shotgun in hand. Then we see them find the cellar and Billy Connor's remains. And they're saying, like, it can't be, it's too big. And they make the clever little line of, he was chained up down here and stuff, maybe once, but not always. Which tells how he was able to, escape and rape Caroline at the beginning. Nice little hint there at everything that's really happened on that night. And the transformation scene is so amazing in this movie. Like, it really is just great, great practical effects work. Like, how he just the face starts changing, and then that cool shot of just the long tongue coming out of his mouth, and the bubbles that start bubbling up in his skin, and all of that looks so fantastic. And I love how the cut on his back starts splitting open, and just his like the way he's jerking his head. Like, it's not just the practical effects, man. It's Clemens' performance here. Like, you wouldn't have one without the other. Like, he really sells this transformation scene, as do the effects on him. And Horace, I love his line of just looking at him and just saying, like, what are you? Like, that's such a great line. And now he has just full-on claws, and he's just, like, full-on beast mode, but still yet to shed his skin. What a great transformation scene. Like, I'd put it close up there with, like, American Werewolf in London. Like, I really would. Like, this is such an underrated movie, man. And just imagine being in the parents' position here. Like, being afraid for a long while that their son's going to die and that he's sick and they don't know what's wrong with him. Then having to be there as a mom and watch your son transform into this hideous creature, and you have no idea what's going on. Like, that has got to be terrifying, man. As a parent, like, you couldn't comprehend it. Like, it's almost like H.P. Lovecraft type stuff. It's like it would be uncomprehendable to you. Is it incomprehensible? Whatever. You wouldn't be able to process in your brain what you're seeing right then and there. Which, that's terrifying. And then, Horace gets grabbed by Michael's claw and smashed against the wall, and the blood, like, as he falls down, the blood is, like, sticking to the wall. That looks great, too. And then they're all searching the woods, and they find skin. And they said, oh, God, he shed his skin. So cool. Like just the whole cicada theme in this movie, like I said, is great. And I, like I said, I've never seen another movie with this premise or anything close to this premise. Like it's such an original idea. I like how we find out the judge wears a toupee. That's funny how that happens when he gets attacked. But the monster, like after shedding his skin, looks fantastic too. And he tries attacking the judge, and the judge runs away like a coward and starts banging on the sheriff's office, and they're all barricaded in there with the door locked and stuff. And then I love how he starts after he gives all the explanation on what happens. How he says, "You got to lock me in the cell. Like that's the only way I'm safe." So then the judge starts explaining the whole story that Billy Connors and his brother Lionel made Billy the creature that he is. They don't really explain how, which is good. You don't need to. Don't need an explanation here. And Lionel comes home and found Billy with his wife and killed his wife, and then locked Billy up in the cellar until he was starving. And then he ended up throwing his wife's body down there for him to eat. And then the people that were all being killed here, all the Kerwins, started robbing graves and to feed Billy and some just evil stuff, man. I mean, you kind of feel bad for Billy in the end of this. Like, even though he's a killer, rapey monster, like, you really kind of feel bad for him in a way. Like, he didn't ask for this. Like, Lionel did this to him. So he didn't ask for any of this. So I kind of feel bad for the guy. And then MacCleary, Eli, just as like he attacked my wife, you son of a bitch, and starts fighting with the judge. And he's saying like, we went after him that night. We chased after him, and he ended up finding his way back to the cellar, the only place he ever knew. And until he just wasted away because they found his corpse down there. Like, I do feel bad for him, like I said. His extracurricular activities, like once becoming a beast, not so much. And then they lock Judge up in the cell because he's a pussy. He's the only one who needs to be in a cell. They say, "Give me a gun, give me a gun," and they're all trying to just barricade themselves in there. And Michael's trying to get in, or Billy, or whatever, the creature is trying to get in through the door. And then they start hearing the cicadas ringing out their sound. And we get such a great decapitation here. Like, this looks so good when the judge is backing against the wall. And you know it's coming, but it's so satisfying when it comes. And you see the creature's arm rip through the wall and grab him and just pull his neck back, and then his head just rips off, and his bottom, his rest of his body falls down the wall to the ground. And then I love the little shot of Caroline, how she's like she's about to puke everywhere. Like, I don't know how she hasn't at this point, like after seeing her son transform like that, and then seeing his skin in a tree, and then hearing all this story about what led to her being raped, and then seeing someone decapitated in front of her. It seems like you would have puked by now. Like, if I don't know, but props to her, man. Like, she's got a strong stomach. And we get such a disturbing scene to end this. And I like how this implies that every 17 years, like the cicadas, that this is going to happen again. Like it happened with Billy, and raped Caroline, had Michael, and now we see Michael find Amanda in the woods and rapes Amanda. And you can only assume 17 years from now she's going to have a kid from Michael, and he's going to go through the same transformation. That's what I take from it, and it's pretty heavily implied. But I think that's an awesome ending. But the rape scene is very disturbing. Like, it doesn't last long. It's not like I spit on your grave type thing. But in the beginning with Caroline, we don't see much at all when she's getting attacked and raped by Billy. Here we see a little more. Like, we see her tits, Amanda. We see the creature like rocking back and forth on her, like. And then she opens her eyes and she sees the creature's face and screams in terror. Like, oh, I can't imagine. Really effective, really disturbing scene. And they kill him. The mom shoots him. Like, so all that stuff that she hasn't puked yet, she has to kill her own son. And she still hasn't puked. So, again, good for her. And just ends after that. Like, Michael's gone, the creature's dead, and 17 years from now, we'll have another Beast Within, which such a missed opportunity, man, that they didn't make a sequel to this movie 17 years after it came out. Like, that is such a shame. We could have gotten a sequel in 1999, The Beast Within 2, and it could have carried that storyline of Amanda giving birth, having a kid, and then they could have. But honestly, I love this film just as a standalone film. And like I said, it's so underrated. I never really hear it brought up. And Queen Latifah, fun fact, has seen this 5 times. Which if I get Paul on the channel, I'll let him elaborate more on that story. So that's a funny story too. But great movie, such great effects, such great acting, such an interesting and original story. The Beast Within, man, 1982. This is just another film of that just adds to the reason why the 80s are my favorite decade for the horror genre. Just so many classic films. So, all right, guys, I will have Final Destination 5 up to close that series up tomorrow. And what else do I got? A Spiral from the Book of Saw to finish that franchise. And then we'll do some Fulci films and everything else that I have to finish up from a few other series. So wherever you guys are from, hope you're having a great night, morning, or day. I'll talk to you soon. Take care, guys.